Hello friends, welcome to KGS IS English YouTube channel and I am Shubham Sharma, your economy faculty. Friends, today we will discuss chapter number 16 part 2. This is the last chapter of economic survey. As I mentioned before, that 16th chapter is divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 we had already discussed. So part 2 is building strategic resilience and strategic indispensability, the role of the state, the private sector and the citizen. Now, if we talk about this particular chapter, second half of the chapter number 16 completely shift from global geopolitics, manufacturing, strategic resilience, supply chain towards something much deeper, the capacity of the state. When we talk about the 16th chapter part 1, we talk about the resilience part, we talk about the import substitution, we talk about strategic indispensability. Now, this 16 part 2 actually shift the chapter from global geopolitics, manufacturing, strategic resilience, supply chain, and now it moved towards the state capacity. That is the capacity of a state. Now, the survey now asks a very important question. Even if India has good idea, good policies, resources, political ambition, can the transformation happen if institutions themselves cannot execute effectively? There are two type of things happen in any country. One is that some country have limited resources, but they try to enhance their capacity, and as a result of that they are moving towards the path of development. On another side, there are many countries who are having good resources, good ideas, good policies, even they have a great political ambitions, but somehow they are not performing up to the standard because of lack of capacity development, or we can say the lack of state capacity. So here the question is, if India is having the good ideas, if India is having good policies, resources, everything, can India have that much of capacity that they can execute all things effectively? Now, the survey argues India's biggest challenge today is no longer lack of policy intent. Instead, the main constraint is institutional capabilities itself. The capabilities of our institution, that is the key role which determine the success of our nation. The chapter starts with India's development model is historically unique. The survey begins by saying India's development journey is historically unusual because India is able to manage the sustained growth when the whole world is facing the uncertainty issues. India is actually having a good sustainable growth, and that to a continuous growth. Then democratic continuity of democracy. We have the fair elections also, even in the center and at the state level. Then macroeconomic stability, inflation is under the control. Okay, even government is trying to reduce their debt to GDP ratio and try to reduce the fiscal deficit and revenue deficit targets. Then incremental reform, we are focusing continuously on incremental reform, and that to those reforms which are promising in nature. Especially if I talk about PLI scheme, it usually talk about that if you increase the production, increase the exports, then only you will be rewarded. So simultaneously, in a very large, very diverse, lower middle income country, the chapter say that this is rare historically. So India, in context of India's per capita income, according to World Bank, we are a lower middle income country. Okay, despite these lower middle income country criteria because of low per capita income, we are saying that we are able to achieve these good things. So the survey therefore argues India's state has already shown resilience and adaptive capability. This is important because the chapter is not saying Indian institutions are totally failure. Instead, it says institutions now face a new level of complexity. So there is nothing mentioned that our institutions are actually have moving towards more failure side, or our institutions are lacking somewhere, but they are saying that the complex scenarios that persist in the world and even the complex scenarios that is persist in India, how are institutions able to manage it? This is what is being discussed in this chapter. So demands on the states have changed. The nature of governance itself has changed. Earlier, states may needed stability, prudence means safe decision making, and administrative continuity. But now government need to coordinate the complex system. They need to handle the uncertainty, respond according to the scenarios, and that too rapidly. learned continuously. So adapting institutions dynamically because the world itself became more fragmented, more technological, more uncertain, more geopolitical. So earlier the states are facing these major issues, and government is also handling these issues. But the world itself now become more fragmented, more technological, more uncertain, and more geopolitical. Now, what is state capacity? Now, this is very important, as we had mentioned that India need to improve about this state capacity. So, what does this state capacity mean? The state capacity means the ability of the government to get the right things done. That means how the government get the right things done. This is the meaning of state capacity. That means state capacity include all of these factors: designing of policies, implementation capability, how to execute the plans, administrative judgments, that means those judgments that are administratively needed, technical competence, how to handle the technical complexities, organizational effectiveness, how effective the organizations will be, coordination ability, how the coordination between different ministries, different organs of the government happen. So the survey says many development failure happen not because ideas are absent, but execution fails. And that's what I always discuss in my class, that where we are lacking, we are not. Many students ask me this question, sir, for agriculture India had done so many schemes, for manufacturing we had done so many, launched so many programs, for MSMEs we are have launched a lot of schemes. Then where the problem is? The problem is not about the idea, the problem is not about the in launching of the scheme. The only problem exists is execution issues. So this is state capacity. Now, irreversibility creep. Now, a single question can be asked in prelims. What is the meaning of irreversibility creep? The survey explained temporary measure often become permanent. Now, what is irreversibility creep? Suppose you are giving some things to the citizens of your nation, but you think that we are giving this just for a temporary relief, but suddenly you realize that these temporary relief now become a permanent options only. That means giving subsidies, exemptions, protection, administrative interventions. Once implemented, political interests get attracted towards it. Suppose a particular government had given the freebies, or they have waived the loans. As a result of that, they are getting good votes. They are becoming more popular among the people. Now they feel that if we continue these things, we will get a good vote bank in the next elections as well. Now, but they don't realize this fact that if we keep on doing this, we are opening a Pandora box, which create a problem for ourselves only in long run. Because of fiscal deficit increase, as a result, you have to borrow a lot, then the loan borrowing, interest payment, all these things improving. So economic interest reorganize and reversal become difficult. Now, existing incentive system discourage experimentation. This is very important. Entrepreneurial initiatives are often judged using metrics suited for routinal administration, procedure compliance, revenue collection, file correctness. But transformation governance require evaluation based on learning, innovation, and long-term capability. Earlier, there are a lot of things: procedural compliances, revenue collection issue, file correctness. All these things take a lot of time. But now with the transformative governance, what we actually require, we require evaluation based on learning, innovation, and long-term capability creation. Now, what is the meaning of safe spaces? This can be also asked in prelims. What is the meaning of safe space? The surveys next explain no successful country made its entire bureaucracy entrepreneurial. Instead, successful state created bounded space for experimentation. What it actually talk about? Suppose there are many countries in the world, they are giving the space to their bureaucrats that you will try to do the experiments. Don't hesitate to take chances, don't hesitate to take experiments, to do experiments. Kya hoga maximum? You will get not that much of successful, or sometimes the project may get fail. But now you have an idea that if we doing the thing in this manner, we will not get that much of results. So in that case, you will avoid that practice and you will follow the next practice, and that may give a huge success. So experiments and researches and a bold decisions should always be taken, and the safe spaces should need to be given. So example, Japan sectoral analysis agencies, Korea planning bodies, Singapore regulatory institution, these space allowed experimentation, learning, so policy adaptation without excessive punishment for failure. So India also need to give safe spaces to their bureaucrats. Now, entrepreneurial safe spaces. The survey suggests India should create mission oriented institutional spaces. यानी कि एग्जाम्पल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग मिशन सेल, एनर्जी मिशन सेल, logistic mission team, and urbanization task group. So rather than we are saying that entrepreneurial safe spaces, it talk about that to give this space, to give this leverage to take bold decision, to go for experiments, you should focus on sector specific things like manufacturing mission cell, energy mission cell, logistic mission teams, and urbanization task group. So the chapter suggests regulatory sandboxes beyond fintech, labor, environment, trade regulation, all these things require these. The ideal division of labor. Now, why division of labor is essential? So that when you are doing the segregation of work, when you are decentralizing the things, the efficiency from every work come out in a better sense. So the survey proposes politicians should set direction, define priority, while bureaucracy should solve the problem, do the experiments, adapt the instrument. This is extremely important. So the chapter sees governance as a dynamic partnership rather than rigid hierarchy. We all knew this thing that to become a developed nation by 2047, all the departments of the government, all the ministries associated with it, even central government, state government, local government, the bureaucrats, the overall hierarchical system, whatever is there in our system, we all need to work in a coordinated manner. If we work in that scenario to create so much of rigid hierarchy, then the development aspect may take some time, and that too not guaranteed. So ideal division of labor is that the politicians should define the priority, while the bureaucracy should solve the problem, experiment, adapt the instrument, and this is extremely important for the long-term growth. Now, what is India's opportunity? The chapter now become optimistic. The survey argues India possesses a great scale, diversified work people, institutional depth, democratic legitimacy. If these are combined with entrepreneurial administrative capability, India can achieve structural transformation. That means apart from giving the entrepreneurs the administrative capability to take the decision, and India already have these things, a good scale, a good diversified things, institutional depth, and democratic legitimacy. So if bureaucratic space and these things work together, we will have a structural transformation in the coming years. Then hysteresis, why policies become hard to reverse. This is what we had discussed. Hysteresis means temporary intervention become permanently embedded. Subsidies, tariff protection, financial forbearance, all these once you will give them, now it become, you think that we are giving it a temporary relief, but you won't realize that suddenly these temporary relief now become necessity because you had done the promises and you need to fulfill those commitments. Now, 3 requirements to avoid this. What are the 3 requirements to avoid these kind of studies? First, staffing structure. That is, mission team require stable tenure, legal support, analytical capability, which reduce fear-driven policy making. That whatever the mission teams you are having, you should have a stable tenure, legal support from the system, and apart from that, analytical capability to think in a positive sense. Then reversibility in process design. Policies should have sunset clause, that we need to attempt this, we need to achieve this by this time frame. Then you have a stage implementation, that this implementation go in a stage by stage level. Then you should have a conditional scaling, better scaling, and mandatory review, which allow learning without permanent lock-in. And third is administrative mindset change. The survey argues credibility come not from never changing course, but from revising intelligently when evidence changes. When the things changes, you need to change it accordingly. A state that cannot reverse cannot learn. जो स्टेट रिवर्स नहीं कर सकता चीजों को, वो कभी भी लर्न नहीं कर सकता. The survey argues learning require flexibility, flexibility require reversibility, and without reversibility, the things become rigid and fearful. So you need to change the things, you need to reverse the mechanism if you feel that this thing is not working. This is usually happening even in the preparation phase. If we are feeling that this particular subject or this particular topic is very difficult for me, let's change the strategy for this subject or chapter. So that's what is required in economy as well. When you are making a policy and you feel that this particular thing or this particular sector need a different kind of strategy, you need to reverse your strategy. So this is happening in every sense. Even when we are playing the sports, we need to reverse the strategy, we need to change the strategy according to the opponent team. So this is where the flexibility need to be there. Now, whether a state allow learning through failure, obviously when you allow learning through failure, you will get more stronger, and when you will learn from the mistakes, from the failures, you will perform well in the next frame. So policies operating in uncertain environment cannot be perfected in advance, because industrial strategy, financial regulation, technology governance, social policy all operate under uncertainty. So government must experiment, revise, adapt things, and sometimes they need to abandon those policies also. Survey says Indian institutions often treat correction as incompetence. Now this is very important. If suppose there is any correction, or if there any change happen, or if any failure happen, then in that case no one will appreciate that the person has done the experiment, he is trying to do something new, and to achieve the results might be there is some lack and he fails. So people now think that he's incompetent. This is happening a lot in India, and that's why people are hesitate to take the new things. People hesitate to use the more of R&D and new experiment, and they try to focus on those things only that is being used from last 15, 20, 30 years, because they don't want to try to take the blame on themselves. And why do they don't want to take the blame themselves? Because people are ready to give the blames. Okay, so creativity is this create fear driven governance. Now what is institutional forgiveness? Institutional forgiveness does not mean corruption tolerance, lack of accountability, and administrative leniency. So if there is any kind of failure happen, it is not because it is not that you are trying to suppose the failure happened because of corruption. So don't try to think that okay, this has happened to corruption, koi baat nahi, agli baar theek kar lenge. No, if it is because of corruption, if it is because of lack of accountability, if it is because of administrative leniency, then you must take action against those. But if it has happened because of honest error, suppose a person has done something and because of honest error happen, or anything that is not non-intentional happen, then in that case there must be a proper time frame or forgiveness need to be there. So the survey says high capacity states sharply distinguish between the two. Low capacity states blur the distinction. So those countries who are right now the developed nation, they always focus that on, they always understand the difference between both of them. So as a result, fear replaces judgment, official avoid initiative, and learning collapses. Now Japan's experience. The survey discussed post-war Japan experienced failed industrial targeting, unsuccessful sectoral bet, costly policy mistakes. But officials were not automatically punished for failure. Instead, the key question was, did the failure generate learning? That's why career advancement depend on judgment, learning, adaptation, so not on never making mistakes. Now friends, what is authoritarian state learn differently? So authoritarian state oftenly encourage local experimentation. They believe in experimentation. Allow policy testing. Let's test ourselves. जैसे तक क्या होगा, फेल ही तो होंगे. Rapid scale success, but this occurred through political insulation, meaning learning is protected from public scrutiny, failures are less transparent. The survey says this model is not suitable for democratic India. So authoritarian states encourage local experimentation, allow policy testing, rapid scale success, but this occurred through political insulation, meaning learning is protected from public scrutiny and failures are less transparent. But in India, this is not suitable because it demonstrated learning always required tolerance for experimentation. That means whatever is the learning, you need to tolerate this fact that okay, we are not getting that much of desired results, we will work hard and we will work with a new phase. But in India, if someone is failed in any objective or if there is any negative thing happen, people will start disbelieving on him. People will start avoiding him, considering him a total failure. So that's what a difference exists. Now, how democracies must learn differently? Democracies require institutions rather than political forgiveness. Means system themselves must tolerate good faith experiment with better review system, proportional accountability, and context sensitive context sensitive. Not all policy failures are same. We cannot say that all policy failures are same, but there are always a different things for different issues. Now, evaluation. Some failures are failure of hypothesis, failure of coordination, failure of timing, failure of implementation. So, states must try to analyze the failure intelligently rather than emotionally. So, states should try to understand why this failure happened, and link this failure with intelligent thinking rather than emotional thought process. Now, RTI, right to information. RTI is India's most important democratic reform. It led to better accountability, reduce secrecy, empower citizen, expose corruption. But sometimes excessive disclosure also create the problem. So official requires some confidential space for their honest discussion, their brainstorming, internal disagreement and policy experimentation. हम कई बार कहते हैं ना, some things are very important that need to be behind the closed doors only. Because if they will get into the open spaces, people will perceive them with a different notion. So RTA is very important, but there must be a particular line. There must be a line where the information need to keep with the officials only, because it will require more brainstorming, more internal things to be discussed, and that not to be come into the public space. Okay, now RTI should remain an accountability instrument. Its purpose is to reduce corruption, improve transparency, enhance democratic participation. The chapter concludes the goal is to balance between transparency and effective governance. Now, organizational design. Why structure matter? Why we need a structure that should be in a proper sense? The survey says state capability depend heavily on how responsibilities are organized, how authority is distributed, how accountability is assigned. Very important. Responsibilities कैसे organize करना है, how authority is distributed, and whom the authority is given, how he should be accountable for it. So traditional bureaucrats organize around functions, department and administrative silos, but the modern governance require cross-functional coordination. Cross-functional means one particular thing, one particular ministry or department should link it with another ministry or department which have a direct or indirect relation. So like climate policy, urbanization, logistic, manufacturing, and that's why PM Gati Shakti is come into the picture. It coordinate all the infrastructure related ministries, and as a result of that, the confusion resolve. As a result of that, better coordination happen and cost reduces and efficiency improves. Now, diffused accountability. Many systems involve multiple agencies but no single accountable owner. There are many multiple agencies but there is no single accountable owner. This creates delay, coordination failure and weak execution. So capability depend on clear outcome like mission based governance structure. These organize around objective instead of permanent function. So mission should have better coordination, it should align the incentives and clarify the priorities. Now, what is the ideal organization model? The ideal organization model, that strong system require balance between functional expertise, create a mission alignment, outcome ownership. So all these will have a performance based institution rather than personality driven. So Niti Aayog's state support mission talk about that state capability, cooperative federalism, long-term planning and evidence-based policy making is quite essential. Then what is state institutions for transformation? These are those institutions which talk about transformation, like a state level think tank, coordination center and strategic planning bodies who done the overall planning for the state, who work on coordination and who work for overall long-term benefits. Example, GRIT Gujarat, Mitra Maharashtra, Setu Uttarakhand and TIFT Tripura. Now, state capability as a human system. The survey says institutions ultimately function through people, and governance quality depend a lot on judgment, skill, behavior, administrative culture, not merely formal structure. So knowledge institution matter. The survey explain state increasingly partnership with IITs, IIMs, university, which improve expertise, data capability and policy designs. Now, what is Jan Bhagidari and participatory governance? Citizens increasingly participate in governance process. That's why we are saying that the participation in democracy is very important. Sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka vishwas, sabka prayas. The chapter says governance is increasingly collaborative rather than top-down approach. So top-down will never work in long run. It should be the distributive or participatory things which work in long run. Mission Karm Yogi, the human capacity reform. Mission Karm Yogi is how to enhance the human capacity. So the program focus on continuous learning, competency building, citizen centric governance, and administrative capability. All these four things are related to Karma Yogi. Survey says it changed not only what officials do but how they relate to citizen. So modern governance cannot rely on static rule. Instead, institutions should learn, adapt, evolve continuously, which create a recurring philosophical theme of the chapter. Now, why human skill matter a lot in even in the AI age? People are saying that AI will disrupt everything. AI will lead to complete destruction of human labor, but it's not like that. AI automate routine repetitive tasks may be removed by AI, but human capabilities is required more in judgmental thinking with better ethics, collaboration, and system thinking. So Mission Karma Yogi therefore emphasize dynamic capability framework and which value duty, service, unity, reflection, and citizen centricity. Now, why regulation is different from traditional administration? Traditional administration actually focus more on enforcement of rule, thop do kanun, revenue collection, maintain order, but why regulation is more important? It requires technical expertise, understanding of economy, risk analysis, dynamic adaptation, which create a major challenge. Survey argues India's administrative structure evolved historically for controlled oriented governance, not for sophisticated regulatory governance. So regulation require these things, whereas traditional administration focus on above aspects. Now, there are other issues also. The problem of over regulation. If you imposed over regulation, the survey says India historically accumulate lot of licensing, paperwork, document quota, permission, approval, inspection, reporting. So there is no ease of doing business in short. So together they create high cost which affect businesses, entrepreneurs, innovation and investment. Too many rules weaken the state. Why? Because enforcement capacity becomes stretched, एनफोर्समेंट जितना ज्यादा होगा चीजें स्ट्रेच हो जाएंगी, मॉनिटरी बिकम सुपरफिशियल, डिस्क्रिशन इंक्रीज एंड करप्शन अपॉर्चुनिटी राइजेस. So the shift is needed from control to trust based governance. Trust based means risk should be supervised, outcome oriented things should be there. So instead of blanket control, what we need that regulation should enable capability, not suffocate it. So responsible regulation, talk about good regulation should have more economic freedom, more public safety, better innovation, and have good accountability also. When regulation are too weak, it will lead to that is also important. We don't require over regulation and we don't require weak regulation. We need a balance. So weak regulation led to huge financial crisis, exploitation of consumer, environment damage, and monopoly abuse. When regulation was too strong, it led to over regulation, compliance problem, approval led to slow processes, reduce innovation, delay in investment, and informality. So that's why we need a balance between both of them. So minimum necessary regulation should identify the problem, be proportionate, having transparency and proper review, which led to better efficiency, better resource allocation, and enforcement quality. So that regulatory things are now required, because the way that things are changing, we need a proper regulation, especially in technology, economics, finance, competition, data governance, and AI system. Now, how corporate India and national development play important role. So firms do not operate in isolation. How the business get benefits? Business get benefit from public infrastructure, better legal system, social stability, human capital, and financial flows. So corporation also possess obligation towards national development, and that's why we always say this thing that Indian government always want that the corporates also should play an important role, because corporates also have an obligation towards national development. Short term versus long term capability. Many corporates feel that quarterly profit अच्छा हो जाए, financial engineering they are focusing, speculative gains they want, but rather than they should focus more on manufacturing depth, put more money on R&D because a multiplier effect will be huge, workforce capability, increase their skill, and innovative thought process need to be there. So chapter says sustainable power come from productive capability, not financial speculation. Now, what is the role of corporate governance? Corporate governance means companies should also focus on the governance part, more of those policies which will increase their profit but also enhance their responsibility towards the national development. Profitability with long-term productive strength. सर्वे वॉन्ट एक्सेसिव फाइनेंशियलाइजेशन वीकन प्रोडक्टिव कैपेबिलिटी, ये भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. अगर आप पूरे टाइम सिर्फ फाइनेंशियलाइजेशन के बारे में सोचोगे तो वो कैपेबिलिटी को सफर कर देगा. So this connect directly with earlier discussion, quantitative easing driven financialization. Survey says high trust society will have low transaction cost, better coordination, and they want to scale the organization. Therefore, function as an invisible economic infrastructure. Social norms. What is a social norm? Economic development depend partly on social behavior. Now, our social behavior is also important. When we say charity begin from home, that's why. So we need to focus on tax compliance, pay the taxes on time, traffic discipline, cleanliness, contract, queue behavior. So these are not merely moral issues. They also affect the economic productivity. So, why development require collective patience? Because large scale transformation needs proper discipline, coordination, persistence, long term thinking. So quick rewards are politically attractive, but long term benefits or durable development needs slow processes. Successful stories always say long term gain over immediate consumption, which have a better skill, saving, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एंड इंस्टीट्यूशनल स्ट्रेंथनिंग. हमेशा हम कहते हैं ना कि छोटी मोटी जो सक्सेस होती है वो जल्दी मिल जाती है, लेकिन जो लॉन्ग टर्म सक्सेस होती है उसमें समय लगता है, लेकिन वो बहुत बड़ी भी होती है फिर. ठीक है. Now the conclusion is development is not merely an economic process. It requires institutional, behavioral, cultural, and strategic move. National transformation require alignment between state capability, corporate responsibility, citizen behavior, and institutional trust. So India's future success not only depend on policies, budget, or reform, but whether the institutions learn, adapt, coordinate and execute effectively. The world जो आने वाला समय है उसमें चीजें और fragmented होंगी, more technologically होंगी, more uncertainty होगी, more competitive होगी. So India require entrepreneurial governance, adaptive institutions, mission-oriented system, trust-based regulation, and learning-oriented accountability. We should focus on mission-based approach. Trust, we need to put on things. Adaptive, we need to adapt the things according to the way they are going. We need to change if it is required. Then learning need to be enhanced. So great nations are not built merely through ideas. सिर्फ सोचने, आइडिया, प्लान से नहीं, काम करने पे होगा. Institution should capable of better execution. This is what I needed. I always believe in this thing. Planning, if done without execution, will always create problem. So execution should be done according to planning. Then citizens should cooperate with themselves, and state should be capable of good learning. Let's discuss few of the questions from this chapter. Consider the following statement regarding entrepreneurial governance. Entrepreneurial governance require institutions to distinguish honest or error from corruption. True. Excessive retrospective scrutiny may discourage administrative initiative and experimentation. True. Entrepreneurial governance implies reducing all form of accountability. No, accountability must be there. If there is a corruption case, if there is delay because of lot of corruption or because of lack of interest, it need to be strictly punished. So third is wrong, 1 and 2 is the right one. Second question, consider the following statement regarding regulatory state. Risk-based regulation implies that all sectors should be subject to identical compliance requirement. Excessive regulation may weaken state capacity in itself by stretching enforcement capability. The chapter advocate minimum necessary regulation rather than blanket deregulation. Now see, risk-based regulation implies that all sectors should be subject to identical compliance requirement. It is not like that. Sectors should be taken according to the need. It should not be saying that risk-based regulation should be applied everywhere with the same manner. So this is wrong. excessive regulation may weaken state capacity. This is true. The chapter advocate minimum necessary regulation is required rather than blanket deregulation. This is also true. So 2 and 3 are the correct one. Moving to third question. Match Mission Karm Yogi, build continuous learning and competency based civil services. True. School of Regulatory Study, develop specialized expertise for modern regulatory governance. True. QE Infinity Trap, strategy to increase manufacturing export. No. Quantitative easing is giving more of money to the people. It's not for tariff protection or export. It's not. It's wrong. So only 2 is the correct statement. Entrepreneurial governance require institutions to encourage experiment and adapt decision making under uncertainty. True. Retrospective scrutiny and fear of investigation may discourage bureaucrats' initiative and risk taking. True. Entrepreneurial governance necessarily require removal of all accountability. This is wrong. So 2 is correct and explaining the 1. So only one of the statement 2 and 3 is correct, and that explains statement 1. So friends, this is in our economic survey series. I hope you get a good insight from this. We had complete everything from chapter 1 to chapter number 16 part 2. Everything is now in very detailed. I had tried to cover as much as possible from the economic survey that is relevant for your studies. If you really like these videos, do subscribe to our channel, do comment. And this is the economic survey for prelims and mains 2026. God bless you all. Take care.